when you were watching Villa at the start of a game, you didn't really see that there was a plan. It was almost plug in and play, and let's look for these moments of magic from Philippe Coutinho. But you're not going to get moments of magic from Philippe Coutinho when the build-up play is so slow and ponderous because there's no plan. That fast start at the weekend absolutely blew me away, and it blew Newcastle away as well, and probably took them by surprise, didn't it?
Start with Moreno and how good he's been. I've been really impressed with him. I think he's excellent. His speed clearly is one of his best traits. His attacking prowess, the way he can so easily get to the byline, just weaving between defenders and create chances for Villa. He's now Villa's most creative player statistically. One possible option they could now look at is if Watkins is our go-to man every week and we can rely on him to play regular like Harry Kane does for Tottenham and score every week, can we have a look at Cameron Archer now, who has had 2 loans in the Championship, done really well, scored in both of them, and Archer's numbers now are similar to what Watkins' numbers were in the Championship when Villa decided to buy him. And Villa have had some success in the Championship. They've bought Ezri Konsa, who's doing really well. Matt Cash, who's gone on to become an international and has done well for Villa. Ollie Watkins, as we've already mentioned. Can we now look at Cameron Archer and think, well, Ollie Watkins is our main go-to guy. We're happy to play him every week when he's fit. But we also have got Cameron Archer on the bench who can come off and perhaps play the odd game and score goals.
The 1874 Show by the Villa View.
Hello, welcome to the 1874 podcast on the Villa View. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Gregg Evans. We missed a week last week because it was Easter. We couldn't get our diary to connect. But in that time, Greg, Villa have yet again won games. They've won 2 games and probably Saturday's win the best under Unai Emery yet.
Yeah, hello, Dan. This is no longer the podcast of doom, is it? We're talking about wins every week, which is a little bit unusual, but all for it, mate. All for this continuing.
Yeah, I think we came back during the 3-game run, didn't we? Where we lost 3 in a row. I think we conceded 11 goals in 3 games, and then since then, 1874 has just been a bundle of joy, Greg.
I know. I was thinking this morning, actually. I was in the shower. I won't go into too much more details.
No, please not.
But I was thinking Villa are 5 wins on the bounce. That's halfway towards the 10-game unbeaten, the 10-game record-breaking run of the Championship, and I'm thinking, wow. I mean, look, I know we're only halfway, but it's looking almost on, isn't it?
Well, they've won 7 out of 8, haven't they? Conceded 2 goals in 8 games. If they could, say they win the next 2 or even stay unbeaten in the next 2, even being unbeaten in the Premier League for 10 games and maybe winning 7 or 8 of those games, that's arguably a bigger feat, isn't it?
It's better. It's better. It's much harder to do. To go 10 games unbeaten. Well, look. 10 games unbeaten, if you have 10 draws, obviously is nowhere near as good as 10 wins in the Championship. But the way Villa will have done it, if they do get to 10, with a minimum of 7 wins and 3 draws, will be incredible. But look, really trying not to get too ahead of ourselves. Some very tough games coming up. Unai Emery's even said himself, look, we can be excited, but there are some tough games coming up. The teams around Villa continue to win. Brighton and Liverpool got decent results in the same match day week that's just passed. And spoke to a couple of players after the game, John McGinn as well. Somebody who always very real with his answers. He's not media trained at all. He'll answer how he wants to answer. And he says, yeah, I'm torn between being excited because this is an amazing run that we're on, but also I'm very wary that we've got some tough games coming up, so we need to be humble.
He kind of feel like he's following the manager's lead at the moment. They're kind of waiting to see what Unai Emery says about Europe. And, he's talking about it, isn't it? He's talking about it as if it's on. I'm sure if he started talking about Champions League football, the players would follow suit and do that as well. I mean, just thinking about the fixtures coming up, Villa have got a horrific record at Brentford, haven't they? We've never done anything at Brentford since those 2 teams have started playing each other in the last decade. So, again, it's another chance, though, to knock aside a really bad record, and so far the lads and Unai Emery have done that.
Yeah, I think so. The run against Brentford in general was really poor, wasn't it? Until the 4-0 home win, when Steven Gerrard had just been sacked and Aaron Danks and Neil Cutler were taking over the team. So it's good to have got that victory and know that Villa can actually beat that team. Going there will be a little bit different. It's weird because I've been there a few times, and Villa have just underperformed badly. Took the lead, didn't they, in the last game? Danny Ings went, Emi Buendia linked up well, but then Brentford came strong in the second half and went and won the game, and they celebrated at the end like they'd won the bloody league. It was incredible. I remember tweeting something like saying about the celebrations, and a lot of the Villa fans were messaging me back saying, "Bloody hell, calm down, will you?"
They do that every game, though, in their defence, Brentford, don't they?
I was just trying to explain what was going on in the ground because you would have thought they'd just won something the way they were celebrating, which fair play. It's football's there to be enjoyed, so you should embrace the victories and enjoy it. I'm all for that as well. But yeah, look, it's going to be a tough game, but I don't think it'll be as tough as Villa have found it in recent years.
No, it shouldn't be, and Villa aren't finding many things tough at the moment. This is easily one of the best Villa teams I've ever seen, which seems unthinkable from the start of the season, when it was quite easily one of the worst Villa teams that I've ever seen. And the fans are enjoying every second of it at the moment. I'm coming on and doing podcasts, and I'm enjoying every single one that I do. I can honestly say at times doing a Villa View, it has been a slog over the years when we're losing to Barnsley 3-1 in the Championship and things like that. And I'm getting all my equipment out and thinking, oh God, only have I just got back at 2 a.m. from watching us get trounced at home to Barnsley. And I got to do a podcast about it and talk about it. But at the moment, it's just a pleasure to talk about Villa, and for you as well. I imagine it's a pleasure to be writing about them. And you've been a busy boy, haven't you? You've got a big piece that's just come out on The Athletic this morning.
Yeah, I've it's like some of the articles that we do at The Athletic, obviously, as the subscribers know, very long and detailed. And yeah, I mean, they do take a very long time to put together, and you have to, speak to so many different people and find out lots of little bits of information to make the articles work. So, yeah, it was something I've been working on for a couple of weeks, if not months now, just building it all together. And it's just explaining really exactly why Villa are good again. I mean, I know that sounds very basic, but there are a lot of people outside of the Villa fan base that are looking in at Villa now and thinking, well, how are they actually doing this? How are they playing so well and getting results? And it just goes into some of the finer details about what Unai Emery's doing day to day in training. The key sort of takeaway from it, and I won't give too much away because it goes into a lot more detail in the article, but it's just that Villa's players are now finding that they have a specific plan for every single game. Now, most players at most teams will tell you that as well, but the level of detail that goes into preparing for each opponent now is incredible. It's the first time in 15 years that Unai Emery he's not managing a team in Europe, so it's a little bit unusual for him. He's literally working Sunday to Saturday or Saturday to Saturday or Sunday to Sunday or whatever. So he's got a lot of spare time in the week, and he sharpened up his focus around opposition analysis, game to game. So he's going into every game now fully knowing what the strengths and weaknesses of the opponents are, and picking a unique, carefully crafted game plan to beat them. And I mean, the classic example was this weekend. Villa played completely different to they have played in recent weeks. Emery studied Newcastle, during the week leading up to the game, realised that their high pressing style was their key strength, and Villa completely played around it. There was no passing between Martinez, Mings and Konza. There was a few occasions, but in previous weeks Villa had done that every single time. It was a case of Martinez kick it long into the channels for Watkins to run into, or bypass the press and find either Moreno and Young, typically Moreno, who played excellent. And then that worked. Villa were able to build patterns of play out from there. So that's the level of detail that the manager's going into now. Every single team meeting before the game is a completely different plan, and the players really need to buy into it, because if they don't understand what they're going to do, they won't get the results. So as much as a lot of the credit needs to go to Unai Emery for preparing the plan, it also, as I say every week, it also should be put on the players as well for executing it.
Yeah, and they executed it to perfection on Saturday. You mentioned Newcastle's high press. Kieran Trippier and Dan Burn, not that Dan Burn comes forward loads anyway, they were pinned right back against Villa on Saturday. They got round the fullbacks and caused them all kind of trouble. 30 seconds in, Trippier was in trouble because of an overload on that left hand side. Yeah, you got Buendia floating around, going wherever he wants. Watkins was drifting over there. Ramsey played really well as well. Moreno's just a constant outlet. We'll come on to him like later on in the show. But you can see what the plan is, and you can say that, like you said, that isn't a plan that they've used in previous games. Whereas under the previous manager, I keep doing this and I really want to stop, but it's all relevant when you're talking about how good Villa are now. When you were watching Villa at the start of a game, you didn't really see that there was a plan. It was almost plug in and play, and let's look for these moments of magic from Philip Coutinho. But you're not going to get moments of magic from Philip Coutinho when the build-up play is so slow and ponderous because there's no plan. That fast start at the weekend absolutely blew me away, and it blew Newcastle away as well, and probably took them by surprise, didn't it?
Yeah, I was really surprised. I was just surprised in general. I genuinely didn't believe that Villa had a performance like that in them. I'm really impressed with the players and the manager and what they've done in the last 5 or 6 months. But I didn't think they would be able to comfortably beat a team that have only lost to 2 teams in the Premier League this season that well. They were unbelievable. Newcastle have literally only lost to Liverpool and Man City.
Best defence as well in the Premier League.
Best defence. I mean, they nullified everything. Newcastle have got the highest XG at set pieces, and they never even looked like conceding once. That's another element that I'll go into in the article. Have a look at some of the details around set pieces and why Unai Emery's bought into that. All the details are in there, so I won't waste too much time talking about it here. But it's just everything, it's just incredible. I do believe that there are a few things that are working in Villa's favour. One, the trip to Dubai and the World Cup break certainly helped Emery get across his methods and messages to the players. He worked with a couple of the players individually, and they're really benefiting now. I think we can all agree that almost every player in that team has improved under him in some aspect. And the second part is the fact that he has got that little bit more time, just week to week, to work on various things and prepare each game. I've asked him this. I said, look, do you think that that's a benefit for you? And his reply was a little bit different. He says, well, I'd much prefer to have a game in midweek rather than have just one game every weekend, because I find, himself speaking, he finds that he can gain more learning from the games rather than just training days and one game a week, etc. So it'd be interesting because look, Villa are very much in the European thick of things now. I do think they will qualify for Europe. It's just which competition now.
When you say which competition, are you considering top 4? Are you considering it?
Yeah, I am, because I'm not ruling it out now. A few weeks ago, I looked at Tottenham, for example, and I thought they were miles away. No way can Villa get them. They're now 3 points behind Tottenham, and very much. I mean, look, if I was a betting man now, if somebody said who would finish higher, Villa or Tottenham, I'd say Villa.
Momentum.
Tottenham are on the slide big time. Villa are on the up. The other, it's whether Villa are going to get Newcastle or Man United. I still think it's unlikely, but I'm definitely not ruling it out, because if Villa win the next 3 games, one of those is against Man United. It's very much on.
Yeah, the fixtures are. You look at it one of 2 ways with the fixtures left, can't you? You look at, we've got to play teams that are in and around us. They're going to be difficult games, or you look at it as a massive opportunity, because just the same, if you in the relegation battle, if you're taking points off each other, it moves you up the table. They're like 6 pointers again, but at the top end of the table, aren't they?
The fact that Villa have got to play, these teams, the fact they've already played Newcastle and beat them, Newcastle will be ever so slightly nervous about them now, and they'll be looking over their shoulder thinking, oh, what are that great team that have just beat us doing this week? Then Villa have obviously got to play Newcastle and Tottenham. The only difficulty is when you're chasing...
You mean Manchester United and Tottenham, sorry.
Manchester United and Tottenham. Yeah, the only difficulty is when you're chasing a finish so high up in the league, it's very rare that 2 or 3 teams drop so many points, together. Villa are looking at it thinking they've got 7 games left. They probably do need to win 6 out of those 7 to get in the Champions League, maybe even 7 out of 7. And still, Man United and Newcastle and Tottenham have to lose 2 or 3 games each. So it's hard, isn't it, to think that's imaginable. But look, the fact that we're even talking about it is absolutely insane because, where Villa were when Unai Emery took over, 3 points off the bottom. If Villa get in the top 6, top 7 even, I'm still saying if they do get Europa Conference League, it's a huge bonus. And a stepping stone for hopefully what could be a future of success. But yeah, if they get into the top 6, incredible. And look, I'd back them to finish higher than Tottenham at the moment. It's just whether Brighton or Liverpool get better results than Villa.
It wasn't that long ago. We were just stuck in 11th for weeks and weeks and weeks. We couldn't move away. We couldn't move away from it, could we? Now it feels like we're kind of stuck in 6th, which is a brilliant place to be.
Yeah, stuck in. And it was almost like a running joke within the club. Every time Emery spoke about it, his assistant who sits next to him in press conferences looked over to him and laughed. The players, every time we spoke to them after the game, we said, look, can you get into that top half? Can you push the top half for the first time in 12 years? Can you do that finish? And they're like, we're still in 11th. And it just never seemed to be moving. But incredible what they've done over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I think going to Stamford Bridge and winning 2-0, even though Chelsea haven't been any great shakes this season, I feel like that gave us a new form of belief, winning that game and getting ourselves above them and getting ourselves into the top half. I think that's given us some extra momentum and given us some extra belief, because the belief's been there for weeks. Let's face it, 7 wins out of 8 is absolutely incredible. I'm just thinking about the teams that are around Villa at the moment and allowing myself to get excited. You look at Manchester United. At the moment, I could make a case for Villa finishing above all the teams around us, I think, because Manchester United are in a lot of competition still. Injuries are piling up. They're now back to that defence of Maguire and Lindelof, which hasn't been brilliant over the years. Spurs are in freefall. If you read any article on The Athletic about Spurs, I mean, Jack Pitbrook and Charlie Eccleshare must be just completely devoid of any enthusiasm about watching the team that they cover. Yeah. Like you've been over the years with Villa, you must have been some weeks where you're like, got to write about Villa losing again. It's just not fun, is it? Brighton are still in the FA Cup. If Brighton were to get to the FA Cup final, we saw with Newcastle being in the Carabao Cup final, it did affect them. They started to lose points and lose ground, and they went through a little bit of a painful period in and around the Carabao Cup final. Completely forgotten who else is around us.
Liverpool,
they might start to get a bit of momentum, but they beat Manchester United 7-0 a few weeks ago, and then lost a terrible game the week after. So then beating a poor Leeds side last night. They've kind of reinvented Trent at the moment. They look a little bit better, but I wouldn't read too much into dismantling Leeds, because Leeds at the back and in defensive midfield were just so open last night. And then Villa have kind of usurped teams like Brentford and Fulham, who everyone was talking about potential managers of the season. They're having excellent seasons. Villa have kind of moved away from them a little bit now, especially if they beat Brentford at the weekend. Like you said, of all those teams, it still feels Villa are the ones with the huge momentum.
Yeah, and Fulham were in there, weren't they? Only a couple of weeks ago, and Villa have got them a week on, a week today, isn't it? Next Tuesday. So, look, we'll know more after the Manchester United game, I think, because 3 games in 3 Villa games. Got to focus on Villa's games first and foremost. Can't do anything about the other teams, and hate trying to predict what might happen. I do think if Liverpool win their game in hand, they're on the same points as Villa. And then if you go the final 7 games where Villa have to play Liverpool as well, you'd probably back Liverpool to get more points than Villa, even in this form. I mean, look, that's inaccurate. Not even in this form, because if Villa continue this form, then they'll get more. But I just think if you got 7 games, Liverpool 7 games and Villa 7 games, you just fancy Liverpool to get more points overall. But let's try and not be too defeatist about it. I think the issue really is you just don't want Brighton to win that FA Cup, because then it goes down to the top 6 only, and that will be a blow.
Yeah, Villa have been done by things like that before, permutations of things. Remember that first, I remember we got trounced by Arsenal in the FA Cup final. That was the first time ever well, not ever, but in recent history, that the team that lost the FA Cup final wasn't given the UEFA Cup, the Europa League place. Like Villa have been the wrong end of that kind of thing before.
Yeah, I don't want that to happen. I mean, look, just for those that aren't aware of some of the permutations, the lowest it can go for European qualification is 7th place, regardless of what happens. Chelsea winning the Champions League, which looks very unlikely. Brighton winning the FA Cup, or or West Ham winning the Europa Conference League. Anything, anything that you can think of, the lowest it will go is 7th. So ideally, what Villa need, if they're trying to get into the top 7 and not too focused on the top 6 or top 4 even, is for Man United or Man City to win the FA Cup. And Man United to stay in the top 4. Pretty much that's that. In short, that's what they need, because none of the other eventualities will really make too much of a difference. Then Chelsea winning the Champions League doesn't really affect things. It just means that it will still go down to 7th, but that's unlikely anyway. So.
I mean, there's as much chance of Villa winning the Champions League this season as Chelsea. We're not even in the competition, Greg. Chelsea aren't going to win the Champions League.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. A few people have flagged up things saying, what happens if West Ham win the Europa Conference League? Does that bring out a new position into the Premier League for teams to qualify into? So no, it doesn't happen. 7th will be the absolute lowest. Let's hope Villa finish somewhere in those top 7 positions, and we'll all be enjoying the European tour next year.
I mean, Manchester United finishing in the top 4 and Man City winning the FA Cup, they feel like 2 very likely.
Or Man United winning the FA Cup and finishing in the top 4.
I can't see it past City for the FA Cup. They're machine like at the moment. Man City, they're just churning out comfortable results week in, week out, aren't they? At the moment, they're frightening. Man City almost bore me sometimes when I watch them. They're the one team that, for some reason, I find myself getting my phone out during the game and looking at Twitter and stuff, because they just find it almost too easy. Manchester City, week in, week out. I watched their game against Leicester at the weekend. Obviously, Dean Smith's first game for Leicester. The game's over after 10 minutes. They're just so boring at times because they're so good. Manchester City, but I suppose Villa are almost getting a little bit like that at the moment. Boring this winning everywhere. Watkins outscoring Haaland. That shouldn't be happening, should it? That's something that should not be happening.
I don't think he is at the moment. I think he's just behind him.
I saw something. I mean, you can dress stats up any way you like. I saw a table of something the other day, and Watkins was ahead of Haaland for the time period that they'd been working it out from.
I think since in 2023, he's on the same amount of goals, and I think since the World Cup, the same amount of goals.
You know what I've seen? I think it was goal contributions. I think because he's got a few assists, they chucked assists in there true. As well.
Yeah, it'd be higher. I think he's got 12 goals and 4 assists in 17 games, and since the World Cup. So I think that's accurate.
His assist on Saturday, by the way, was beyond good because he scored 2 goals. Yeah. His assist doesn't really get talking about, but that assist was ridiculous. Such a good header back.
I was thinking it was a foul.
I did as well.
From where I was sitting, I was that's a penalty.
I'm in the hole. I'm right behind it, and I thought the same. I was up screaming for a pen, and then the next thing I know, the ball's in the back of the net. Yeah,
brilliant. Great from Ramsey as well. I mean, there's an article that on The Athletic that my colleague wrote on Monday, and it just highlights some of the impressive movements and positioning from Ramsey. He was actually a real key player in that game, and while I thought he had a good game and there wasn't a single Villa player that didn't, it took me by surprise actually how important his positioning was. Taking up this very narrow position. I can't explain it without all the slides that are showed on the screen, but go and have a read of that. It's really interesting.
I mean, everyone must be digesting so much Villa content at the moment. It's probably a good time to try and get people to subscribe to The Athletic, actually, at this point, to read your stuff, because, I'm taking in all kinds of Villa content at the moment. There's so much variety of podcasts, fan podcasts you can choose from as well, because there's just so many nowadays. Yeah. Villa fans must be watching literally every piece of content that they can at the moment. But The Athletic, it is something different, isn't it? Because there is these long reads. It does go into massive detail. I mean, I was a subscriber of The Athletic before I worked for The Athletic. I love football, and I love reading about the other teams as well, because that helps me as well with my other work when I have to cover other teams, because I feel like I get a sense of what's going on. But The Athletic really is something different. There's a lot in there to take in, but especially some great stuff around Villa at the moment from you.
Yeah, my workload's been extremely busy over the last couple of weeks or months, but I love it. I wouldn't want it any other way. And look, I appreciate lots of people have other subscription services that they have to pay for, and we're still in a cost of living crisis. So I'm not trying to sort of sell everything to people who are listening.
No.
But for those who want to, go a little bit deeper and find out things that, aren't necessarily reported elsewhere, then lots of the articles that I produce have those kind of details in them. And I think, the content from The Athletic, from the Express and Star, from the Birmingham Mail, we're the guys that go home and away covering Villa every single week. We're the guys that speak to the manager every week. We know what's going on at the club compared to some of the other outlets out there. There's a lot of content on Villa at the moment, but we're the guys that sort of know the real ins and outs of it. So hopefully the supporters are enjoying some of the content from those three outlets at the moment.
Always, whenever I read one of your pieces, I always read the comments as well, and the comments are a joy to read at the moment. There's also some, I mean, I sound patronising here, and I don't mean to at all, because a lot of these people are way more intelligent than me that are reading The Athletic. But you read it, and there's some really good analysis within the comments as well, isn't there? Which you go into comment sections on other websites and stuff, and it's full of rubbish, essentially. But some really good stuff from the people that read in The Athletic every week and that follow the Villa stuff every week. I noticed that when we used to do the pod on The Athletic as well.
No, it's good. It's good to have that interaction, and look, you do get some story ideas from there. That the supporters know their football. They know what's going on at their clubs. You can't fool them. That it's great when they leave positive feedback as well. I'm always happy to have a debate about football and articles that I've written with them. But those are the guys that go to the games every week. They know what's going on. You can't fool them. And there's also a lot of overseas subscribers. People in America and Australia. We tend to find a lot of comments come from there. So it's good to keep those guys updated, because they can't go every week, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we've planned to do that and try and push people towards athletics. That naturally was something that happened. Just talking, and like you said, we're in a cost of living crisis, but there is always discounts knocking around as well, where you can get it for £1 for a month for 6 months and try it out and see if you like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to renew. Yeah,
look, and if anybody does want a free trial, I can send them a guest pass. Just let me know on Twitter or anything, and I'll send you over a pass. You don't have to commit to buy.
Yeah, you're gonna get about 50 DMs now, Greg. to send over guest passes for a week. I think I've got. So I'm a subscriber. I think you get 5 for being a subscriber. I've got something 5 that I can send over if people do want to check stuff out for a week. I wanted to talk to you, Greg, this week. I know you've interviewed him fairly recently, but it was before this excellent run that we've been on. I'll talk about Alex Moreno a little bit. Now, Unai Emery has transformed Aston Villa Football Club. But as transformative signings go, when we talked about like Villa signed Tyrone Mings in the Championship and that transformed the defence and was a big platform to them getting up, I wouldn't have said that we needed a left back at the time. I'd have said there was other more urgent priorities. But Unai Emery identified a player from Spain that he thought would help his system, which is Alex Moreno. I actually think as transformative signings go, hasn't been many better in the last decade so far than Alex Moreno. He has offered something so different down that left-hand side.
Yeah, I'd like to go into a little bit of detail around this, just to try and be fair to perhaps Luca Dean, maybe the recruitment team previously as well. So let's start with Moreno and how good he's been. I've been really impressed with him. I think he's excellent. His speed clearly is one of his best traits. His attacking prowess, the way he can so easily get to the byline, just weaving between defenders and create chances for Villa. He's now Villa's most creative player statistically. He's more
likely. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, he's more likely to get an assist in a game than any other Villa player. Those are the statistics from Opta that we know about. So, look, he passes the eye test. He's great to watch, and statistically, he's brilliant. Now let's look at who signed him. So Emery signed him. Emery identified him. Villa were happy to buy him because he was just £12 million, looking like a bargain deal at the moment. And they didn't have another left back at that point because Emery quickly decided that Augustinson wasn't for him. He could cut short his loan. So Emery wants 2 players in every position.
I'd forgotten about he even existed.
I know,
He
it's
just
crazy,
says his name. He was a player at the start of the season for us. I was thinking, who was our backup left back? Was it Ashley Young? No,
Yeah.
I've completely forgotten about him.
I know,
Still
it's
can't
just
say his
gone.
name though. I can't.
So yeah, his loan was cut short, was sent, fixed up a loan elsewhere. Villa decided that they could get a player that Emery wanted, somebody that he knew about, and it would give him, one signing in the window who would help strengthen the squad and give Villa 2 players in that position. So when Moreno came in, it wasn't a case of Moreno would play straight away ahead of Luca Dean. It was a case of let's have a look at the 2 of them, see how they get on. If you remember, Luca Dean was injured, but he came back a little bit quicker than expected and played a home game, I think against... It was the Leicester game, wasn't it? I think
if I had to put my life on it, I would say Leicester as well.
It was the Leicester game, and he was poor. I mean, we come in, he played the first half, he was poor. Moreno.
In fact, he did play that game because I remember thinking,
yeah, he did. Yeah,
he's not where he should be. Yeah.
So he came straight back in, which showed that Moreno wasn't ready, or Moreno wasn't signed to be the number 1 left back. Luca Dean started the first half, was poor. Alex Moreno came on, was arguably even worse. Made a mistake, and I think Dennis Pratt scored a goal.
Fourth goal, yeah.
Yeah. So the 2 of them put both poor on that day. So again, they're at a level where either of them could play the next game. Now, the way Emery wants his team to attack is, as we know, the right back sometimes drops in and becomes a third central defender, and the left back always goes forward. He did that with Villarreal, with Purvis Estupiñán, and his back 3 were made of 2 centre halves and a right back. The left back was given freedom to go forward. So it would be really interesting to see in this free-flowing Villa team just how good Luca Dean would be if he was in that position right now. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Alex Moreno, but I'm also trying to balance it out by saying we don't know how good Luca Dean could be in this position at the moment. So,
because he's never played
in this consistent, free-flowing, confident Villa team. Now, I think Luca Dean's a good player going forward. I think his delivery is excellent. I think he was creating a lot of chances, and he was starting to link up all right with Coutinho at the back end of last season in spells. I'd love to see whether he could come in and be as good as Moreno, linking up with Jacob Ramsey. The momentum's all with Moreno. There's absolutely no reason to change him. I really like him. Emery clearly likes him. The fans are buying into him. He's creating lots of goals. But I just think we can't rule out Luca Dean just yet because, as I've said, he might look good in this system as well.
Well, you want 2 players, don't you? Luca Dean's a very, he's a French international. Villa paid a lot of money. I believe he's one of Villa's highest earners as well, Luca Dean. So they put a lot into getting him in January. They sensed that opportunity with what was going on at Everton, and they pulled him in. If they'd have waited a week, they probably wouldn't have got Luca Dean in with the way that the Everton managerial stuff was going at the time. Benitez was there. We signed Luca Dean. Then Benitez got sacked the week after. Lampard probably would have kept hold of him. I'm going to imagine he would have wanted to. Now, Luca Dean's been a really good Premier League player over the years, played for France. But I'll just look at how they play the game, and to steal my Sky Sports News colleague Dave Reed's phrase that he used about Luca Dean. Luca Dean, I think, and this is what Dave said, I agree with it, he's a stand and deliver left back. I don't think he's got the guile or the pace that Moreno's get, the mobility to get forward and squeeze himself into the box. Moreno is an exceptionally skillful footballer. He weaved himself out of some tight spaces in the penalty area last week, and he also seemed to be pretty good with his right foot as well, from what I've noticed. I just think in an Emery system where you want your left back to be up and down, purely, I'm just talking from a pace perspective here, Moreno is a lot quicker than Luca Dean. I find strongest. I don't think Luca Dean can do the things that Moreno can perhaps do. In my opinion, at the moment.
And look, perhaps he can't. Perhaps he would not be as effective in this Villa team. I just think it is just too soon, and perhaps a little bit unfair on Dean to rule him out and to say it was a bad signing. It was somebody who can't ever make an impact for Villa again.
Of course.
He's a good left back. He's a good, proven international and Premier League left back. He's played 46 times for France, I think. I'm not sure. I don't think Moreno hasn't ever played for Spain. And there's no difference between the 2 international teams. But look, I'm not I'm not playing down Moreno at all. I'm really enjoying watching him. I've had him in my fantasy football team from day one, and
That's a good pick.
he's got me a lot
Good
of
pick.
points.
That's a good pick from you. That is
Yeah.
exceptional pick. I got Watkins in before he went on this run. That's the only thing I've done right this season on fantasy football. So you're right on Luca Dean, because look at the start of the season, there was players at Villa that I was saying I think they need taken out for their own good. Concert, he's a prime example of someone I was thinking he's in trouble here. He's playing badly every week. He's costing us. You know, you put him in a proper system, he looks back to his best. He looks, in fact, better than he did in before his best season for Villa, that lockdown season. He looks better now than he did then, and he was very good then. So you're right, because Luca Dean could come into this team and come into this system, and he could look good, and he could end up being a good signing still, because there's been plenty of players that Villa fans have thought aren't good enough. Watkins is a prime example.
Yeah.
When we sold Ings, there was a lot of Villa fans saying, "Well, we sold the wrong striker here. We've let go of the wrong one. We've got rid of the goal scorer," and then suddenly Watkins goes on this run where he's just now one of the most lethal goal scorers in the Premier League. So you are right, but I'm just thinking from just the eye test purely of watching them play going forwards, they're different. I don't think they're the same type of player, and I'm not sure Luca Dean could do the things that Alex Moreno can do.
Yeah, and perhaps not. It's just, you know, I'd like to see it first before I can judge it, and you know, it probably won't happen, will it? Because if Moreno doesn't get injured, then there's no real reason to change him. No reason to change a winning team. But Emery just has this sprinkle of magic. He just manages to get players that are either underperforming or not quite as good as we thought to play really well. Did it at Villarreal. You know, we did another piece. Again, I'm sorry to keep promoting athletic articles here, but I did another piece on just a couple of days ago where we spoke to 3 or 4 Villarreal players and just asked them what he did,
Yeah, I read it.
and why he was, why Emery was so good. How did he come to an average La Liga team and get them to win the Europa League and get them in the Champions League semi-finals? So the players explain what he did, and it was always about believing in a process, trusting what we did, trusting what I say. Gerard Moreno spoke to us and said, we knew exactly what we needed to do every game, and we trusted that it would work because Emery had spent the time researching it. And he said, if you follow what I'm doing, you play this, and this way, we'll win the game. And they just did. They lost 1 game in 30 games in their first run, and this is what Emery does. At Arsenal, he lost the first 2 games to Chelsea and Man City, but then went on a 22-game unbeaten run. At Villarreal, they lost 1 in 30 very early on. At Paris Saint-Germain, they lost 2 in 15 in his first season. Didn't go on to win the league in the first season. That's the one real blot in his career. But at Valencia, you know, way back in 2008, they only lost 2 of the first 13 games. He has this magic so he has this knack of sprinkling some magic on a team very early on. The key is whether he can continue it at Villa now. You'd like to think if he could get to the end of the season, then hopefully Villa will be able to sign players that are good enough that will be able to get Villa through games, regardless of a real detailed plan next season. And look, if Emery can still be producing these master plans and have slightly better quality players, how exciting could that be?
Yeah, I think even the best managers have seasons where it doesn't. You know, you talk about the PSG season there. You know, there's been a couple of seasons where Pep's Man City haven't won the league. You know, it happens.
I just think
managers have bad seasons.
Paris have to in France, Dan. I think they just have to. They've lost one. They haven't won. They haven't won the title twice, I think, in 10 years, and one of those is under Emery.
So he's always, the other one, wasn't it?
Always going to be pulled up on it, you know, and the Champions League collapse where they were, you know, conceded 4 goals against Barcelona in the last 3 minutes or whatever stupid it was.
That's not the only time that's happened in the Champions League. It feels like it happens once a season. It happens to someone.
Does
the Champions League. Hopefully not Chelsea.
Roma did it 1 year, didn't they? They scored a load of goals.
I remember Real Madrid did it. Felt like they did it countless times last season where they were dead and buried with like a minute left, and they ended up going through some of the odds you could have got on Real Madrid winning the Champions League at the back end of the quarterfinals and the semi-finals. You'd have got ridiculous odds, really. Just before we go, I just wanted to pick your brain on one thing, because we've spoke previously on this podcast about Villa. Villa will go big for a striker in the summer. Has Watkins's run changed that? Because I actually think this is based on nothing but opinion from me, by the way. I'm not taking this from anyone. I think now, because of Watkins' goal scoring from being that central player, I think they will go big on an attacker, maybe to play in that role next to him. But I don't think it would be that out-and-out striker, if that makes sense. Am I right in assuming that now?
I think Villa are at a stage now, incredibly, where they are looking at where they're going to finish in the league, and then reacting on the back of that. Yeah, there are plans and there are targets, but if Villa are able to squeeze into fifth, or incredibly, if they do somehow get into fourth, they're going to open up a completely different market. Now, what I know is that Emery is very, very ambitious. He's already spoken about targets, and some of the names that he has suggested, you just think, how are Villa going to sign that guy? So I think
do tell Greg, don't be shy with that.
I think it's just he's very ambitious, and look, the club are well backed, as we know, by the owners, but managing to seal one of those deals, I think is going to be difficult. But if they do get into fourth or even fifth, it might open up just a new market and say, well, perhaps look, we could go really big for this player now, because we're going to need those extra numbers and extra little bit of quality. With Watkins, I think what Emery and the club will know now is that they can trust him to score the goals that they need, regardless of who they're playing against. Watkins' record's brilliant, especially against the so-called Big Six, which no longer exists.
We've got Newcastle in there now, the big seven.
Yeah, I mean,
look, two against them at the weekend.
I'm going to stop using it now, because it just doesn't exist anymore. The Big Six. I mean, Chelsea are 11th, for God's sake, and Liverpool have had a poor season. So yeah, let's just stop using that term. But in previous years, they did exist, and Watkins has scored against all of them. So, really impressive from him. You can rely on him in the big games. I do think Villa will be really keen on buying that sort of wide player that plays in the Bailey role.
That's what I would say.
I think that would be key. And one possible option, which they might still look at, I do. If I had to say whether they will buy a striker or not, I do think they will. But one possible option they could now look at is, if Watkins is our go-to man every week, and we can rely on him to play regularly like Harry Kane does for Tottenham and score every week, can we have a look at Cameron Archer now, who has had 2 loans in the Championship, done really well, scored in both of them, and Archer's numbers now are similar to what Watkins' numbers were in the Championship when Villa decided to buy him. And Villa have had some success in the Championship. They've bought Ezri Konsa, who's doing really well. Matt Cash, who's gone on to become an international and has done well for Villa. Ollie Watkins, as we've already mentioned. Can we now look at Cameron Archer and think, well, Ollie Watkins is our main go-to guy. We're happy to play him every week when he's fit. But we also have got Cameron Archer on the bench who can come off and perhaps play the odd game and score goals.
Duran's there as well,
and Duran, of course, but somebody who they're slowly nurturing, and Emery keeps reiterating that he needs more time. So still not quite sure on where he's at the moment. We need to see a bit more of him. But Archer is scoring goals regularly in the Championship. Villa have looked at Watkins in the past in the Championship. That might just be an option. Buy a really good winger for whatever amount. Keep Watkins as your guy, and maybe have Archer as your backup. Might be an option.
I think it's feasible. If Archer was a player in the Championship, forget being at Villa. If he was just playing for Middlesbrough in the Championship at the moment, teams would be looking at him and saying,
100%.
If they don't go up, Premier League teams would say he looks like a real goal scorer. He looks like a real threat. He's getting assists as well on Friday. I always do that when I'm talking about something that happened in the past. A point behind me. I don't know why I do that. He got assists. Was it 2 goals, 2 assists on Friday night that he got from Middlesbrough?
2 goals and an assist, I think. Yeah.
But he's involved in goal contributions. Like you say, Villa picked Watkins up from a similar position. If they qualify for Europe, there's more games, and some of those games, if you're in a group stage, they're games that you perhaps would, you leave out a couple of your players and rest them for the weekend. That's perfect for the likes of Aaron Ramsey, Archer, and Arobenham, I would say, to come back into the squad if Villa get European games. So that's another reason I now have completely changed of saying, I said maybe a month ago, if we get Europe, I'm not sure we're ready for it. Is it too soon? Emphatically, we would be ready for it, and you've got to embrace it. Like you said, I was wrong with what I said a month ago. So it's just so exciting to even be talking about this at the moment. But just finally, because I know you need to go, So Villa, would Villa have a list of forward players, for example, and midfielders, whoever they want to bring in, and have a number one choice, have a choice that if they were to finish in the top four, or a player if they were to finish in the top six, or a player if they were to get in the Conference League, is the drop down from qualifying for the Europa League to the Europa Conference League in terms of bringing players in? Is that drop?
No, that's not noticeable.
It's not.
No,
okay.
No. I mean, look, I can't confess to knowing the real finer details of Villa's recruitment plan and the exact targets that they're after. But generally, I can speak about some of the plans that they've got, because I am aware of that. So it will be a case of Unai Emery is going to take a lot more control and charge over identifying players now. Villa have got a very strong backroom team in Johan Langer and his team of data scientists and scouts, who will still be providing options and saying, look, this guy's somebody we've been chasing or looking at for a while. He could really fit into your position. Or if Emery's looking at a couple of players and saying, well, I really want him, the backroom team will say, we've been looking at this guy as well, have a think about it, see what you think, and then it's down to the manager to decide. As I said previously, Emery's very ambitious in the players that he's looking at. There were a couple of targets that Villa looked at in January and just missed out on, which were a little bit frustrating for the manager, and maybe might come back into the reckoning in the summer. But it will be a case of, look, if they get into the Champions League, they can then use that as look, we're a Champions League team now. Look at the incredible journey that we're on. Come and play for us. The budget will be bigger, etc. But they'll be knowing that they're probably going to end up somewhere between 5th and 8th. And then I don't think if you're targeting a Nico Williams at Atletico Bilbao, somebody that Villa, Emery does want to sign, I don't think it really makes a difference if you say we finished 6th or 7th or 7th or 8th. It's not going to be motivating to that player. To play in the Conference League, for example. It will be to come to the Premier League if he wants to, but he's very sort of settled at Bilbao, and that's the reason he didn't leave in January.
Yeah. Players will want to work for Emery now as well. They'll see what's happened to players that were already at the football club and see how their time at Villa has been transformed. Players will want to come and play for this manager, because everyone's talking about Villa and talking about Unai Emery now, which wasn't the case even 2-3 weeks ago. People weren't talking about us. Everyone's talking about us now because we're making a right old splash in the Premier League. Right, then we'll call it a day.
And the club.
It's a massive club. It's a massive club.
There are lots of players that I've interviewed in the past, and they say, we remember when Villa were... John McGinn, for example, he said, look, I remember when Villa were in the UEFA Cup under Martin O'Neill, and I remember watching those games, and I want to be a part of that. And so even some of the foreign players are aware of Villa in the past, so they'll know the size of the club, and just having Emery to work under will be another pull. Yeah,
well, I'm already looking forward to the summer, regardless of where Villa finish. This really all last summer. Last season, sorry, was saying just wait till the summer, give Gerrard time, and obviously it turned out to be an absolute catastrophe. This time, this manager means serious business, and I'm excited wherever Villa finish for what Unai Emery tries to do in the summer. Right, we'll call it a day there on 1874. I'm off to interrogate Gregg for more names when we're not live doing a podcast. But thanks to Gregg for joining me. Thanks to Adam for producing as always as well. And thanks to everyone who's listening and watching, because we're across so many different platforms now. I said this on the show we did the other night. If you just listen to 1874, the numbers on YouTube look a bit skewed because it looks like they're low, but it's because people are actually listening on all the other platforms as well. So our numbers are actually really, really high at the moment, all round on the Villa View, which I really, really appreciate. If you do want to help the channel, support the podcast, then if you want to buy some Luke Roper clothing, use our discount code. It's TVV20. You get 20% off everything that Luke Roper have to offer, and we get a cut of that, which helps support the channel. So if you are planning on buying some Luke Roper clothes, please use our discount code. Gregg and myself will be back with 1874 next week, and we'll be back on the Villa View with all our normal match preview shows Thursday, Friday. So watch out for them. Wherever you're getting this podcast, subscribe with your post notifications on. Leave some comments as well if you are enjoying the show, and give the video a like on YouTube if you have liked it. I didn't realise how important likes were until recently. So give the video a like, and we'll start popping up on other people's feeds, and that will help us get the views up as well. Gregg, thanks